Hello, class. Today, we're going to be finishing our story, our chapter book, called Treasure Island. Now, previously, we would have read some of these chapters during other class periods, but we're coming back to it, and we're going to finish this book up today. I want to do a quick recap. This story is about pirates and a young boy named Jim Hawkins who finds a treasure map and sets out for adventure. He has to face many dangers and many challenges, but he's always honest and truthful, and he always does the right thing. And so far, he's doing a pretty good job in the story. So let's find out what happens from where we left off. When we left off, he was in trouble. He was stranded, he didn't know what to do, but Long John, the pirate that's normally mean, decided to save young Jim's life. And today, we're going to see what happened after that. I don't know. But I want to introduce our standard that we're going to be addressing today. Our Georgia Standard of Excellence is writing an opinion piece based on topics or texts which support a point of view with reasons. So, based on what we read today, you're going to write an opinion piece based on if you think honesty is the best policy, or if you think it's okay to lie and not keep your word. We're going to see how Jim Hawkins keeps his word and see how it benefits him in the end. So I want you to turn your listening ears on and get ready. Ready to hear, ready to learn, so that you can write your opinion piece based on what you think. All right, now let's talk about this book. We've previously talked about it, but I want to draw some attention to the image found on the title page, or on this front cover, the cover page. You can see the pirates. Which character do you think is Jim Hawkins? Young Jim Hawkins. I don't think it's him. He looks a little older. He looks older too. See his gray hair? And these look like pirates. I think that's young Jim Hawkins. I'd say he's about 8 years old. And the author of this book, his name is Robert Louis Stevenson. You can see it right here. Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson was a Scottish novel, poet, and travel writer. He loved to travel across the world and have his own adventures. But he died at a very young age of 44 because he got tuberculosis. His book is titled Treasure Island, and it was his first major success. However, this chapter book was named something different before. It was named The Sea Cook. However, it didn't take long for him to change that book's name to Treasure Island, which responded better to his audience. So, it is also believed that this story is taking place in the time period of the 1700s. Many speculate that it took place between 1757 and 1762. We definitely know that this story takes place in the 1700s because on one of the pictures in this book, it can be seen on Billy Bones' log. At the very top, there's a date that can be clearly seen, and it says 1745. Because of this, we can know for sure that is set in the 1700s. That's what you need to know before we read the book. And now I want to introduce the story vocabulary. These are some key vocabulary words that we're going to see in the chapters that we read today. The first word is object. Object. That means you're expressing your disagreement or dislike of something. Like when there's a court going on, when there's court and someone's pleading this case and someone's pleading the other, and the lawyer is defending their client, and someone says, "I object, Your Honor. I object." They're saying, "I don't agree. I don't agree with that, Your Honor. I think it's this." That's what object means. And we're going to see that in our chapter book today. The second word is beam. Beam. I'm beaming with joy. I'm beaming with happiness. This means that you're showing your happiness or thankfulness through your facial expressions, which can mean a smile or like a super surprised happy face. That is beaming. I'm beaming with excitement. I can't wait to read this book. Our third word is mutineers. This word you probably don't know. It means someone who rebels against authority. Like a criminal would. They don't obey the laws, so they have to face the consequences. Or maybe when someone doesn't listen to their boss and they just do whatever they want to do. This could be seen as someone who is a mutineer. But in our story, the pirates are mutineers because they don't listen to authority. They don't listen to leaders. So that's the word we're going to see in this book today. And our last word is Hispaniola. Hispaniola is an italicized word that we'll find in our story. And I wanted to place emphasis on this word, even though it's not necessarily a vocabulary word you'll see commonly. It's just one in this story. And I wanted to place emphasis on it because you may not know what it means. It's actually the name of the ship that Jim Hawkins sails on. So we're going to see that in our chapter book today. Now, let's read our chapters today to find out if it is important to be honest and keep your word, or if it's okay to be dishonest. I don't know. Let's find out. So we're going to start on chapter 22 and then finish our book. So we're going to read 3 chapters in whole, but they're really short chapters. Jim and the Treasure Hunt. Ooh. We woke up when the doctor arrived, and I was ashamed to even look at him. Long John Silver was bright and merry. Good morning, doctor. Come and see your patients are all doing well. While the doctor made his way up the hill, Long John added, and there is a little stranger who would like to meet you. The doctor stopped right there. Jim? He said. But of course, said Long John. Shocked as he was, the doctor decided to talk to me after he was done with his patients. I wanted to stop here and ask you guys, who do you think the narrator of our story is? That's right, Jim Hawkins. How do you know that it is Jim narrating the story to us? That's right, because the book says that Long John wanted the doctor to talk to Jim. Then in the next sentence, it says the doctor decided to talk to me. This means that the doctor was talking to Jim, and Jim was referring to himself as me. Thus, he has to be the narrator. Let's move on. Let's continue reading. Shocked as he was, the doctor decided to talk to me after he was done with his patients. After attending to their wounds, he asked to speak to me alone, to which the men objected. Now, before we get to that word objected, I want to take a picture walk. I want you to raise your hand if you can tell me where Jim Hawkins is located in this picture. That's right, class. Jim is the young boy standing away from the other 2 men. How do you know that the young boy is Jim? That's a good observation, because Jim is not yet talking to the doctor, which means he would be standing further away. And the other 2 men are dressed as a doctor and a pirate, which means those 2 men could not be Jim. Now, does anyone remember what the word object means? We just read about it. That's right. It means that you're expressing your disapproval about something. Why do you think the men objected to the doctor talking privately with Jim? I think it's because they don't want Jim to run away from them. Jim knows how to find the treasure, the buried treasure that's hidden secretly. But I don't know. Maybe he will run away. Maybe he won't. Let's read to find out. Silence, roared word, Long John." He turned to the doctor. "Now, sir, we are very grateful for your help. Hawkins, do you promise not to run away?" "I did." Long John then asked the doctor to take a walk down the hill and that he would walk me out. So here's another question. What does it mean to make a promise? That's right, class. It means you commit to do something. If you break a promise, does that make you dishonest? Yes, it does. If you break a promise, that means you are not being true to your word. So here, Jim made a promise to Long John that he would not run away. Let's see if he keeps his promise. Once outside the door, his behavior changed completely. He looked at the doctor. "Now, doctor, I've saved Jim's life, and I am only here now to save mine. I hope you will help me." "Aren't you afraid?" asked the doctor. "Very," admitted John. "I will be killed for sure, but I hope that you will know that I did some good in saving Jim's life." Here's another question to think about. In that short paragraph that we just read about Long John, do you think he is being selfish or being a good, caring friend to Jim and the others? You're right. Long John was kind to Jim when he saved his life that one time, but now he only cares about himself, which means he's being kind of selfish, which isn't good. Let's keep reading to find out what happens to Long John and Jim. With that, Long John left. The doctor scolded me until he heard my story. "You found the ship? You've been the one saving us all along." He encouraged me to break my word and come with him, but I didn't do so. Here the doctor is encouraging Jim to break his promise that he made to Long John. Long John is not being a very good friend to Jim, but Jim promised to not run away. Do you think Jim should have broken his promise? No. Jim made a promise. Even if Long John isn't being a good friend, Jim still needs to keep his word, which he did. He refused to break his word, which is a good thing. Let's keep reading. Oh, here. This is Jim talking. "I have given an oath. Once back with Long John, the doctor told him it was best not to find the treasure." "I have to, or else they'll kill me themselves," replied Long John. It sounds like Long John is scared. The doctor said, "Then I warn you to beware of the high winds at sea. Those waves can kill. If we get out of this alive, I promise to do everything in my power to save you." Long John beamed and thanked the doctor. The doctor then shook my hand and left. So what did Jim mean when he said Long John beamed and thanked the doctor? We talked about this word beam. It was one of our key vocabulary words. Does anyone remember? That's right. It means he was happy and showed it on his face. He might have even smiled. I don't know. Pirates may smile sometimes. I don't know. All right, let's keep going. Long John Silver then turned to me and said, "If I've saved your life, you've saved mine. I saw how the doctor asked you to run. By not doing so, you saved my life. I suggest we stick together for the hunt." So here we see a good thing that happened because Jim was honest and kept his word. He saved Long John's life. If he would have left Long John, they wouldn't have been able to find the treasure. And Long John would have been in a lot of trouble because he had a lot of pirate buddies that were counting on him to give them some treasure. And they were going to get mad if he didn't. So here Jim saved his life, and Long John is grateful for his honesty, for Jim's honesty. We had our breakfast after that. where Long John's manner changed again. He became really loud and boastful. I was worried I'd missed the reasons behind my friend's doing. Why did they leave the fort and give up the map? What was the warning of the waves about? All these doubts filled my head when we left for the treasure hunt. Each of the pirates was armed with several weapons. Along the way, the men looked at the chart and argued over which tall tree the mark might be. Each picked up his favorite. He walked and turned left, walking up a crease. The jungle became dense. I want to stop here and ask, what do you think Jim meant when he said the jungle became dense? Think about the word dense. Dense means crowded. So a dense jungle could mean that it is thick and hard to get through. It could mean that there was mud everywhere that made it hard to travel through. Or maybe there were many trees in the way and they had to take their swords and break the branches out of the way so they could walk through. Or maybe there were many bushes and the bushes that had thorns on it made it hard for them to walk through the jungle. I don't know. Let's look at our picture in our book to try and imagine what the dense jungle looked like. Here's a picture right here. Well, I see Long John, I see Jim, and I see some other pirates. And it looks pretty clear right here, maybe muddy. But back here it does look like a dense jungle. I see a lot of bushes and there's some more trees and bushes. It looks very thick and crowded and like it would be hard to walk through. So that's what Jim meant when he said it was a dense jungle. Just then, we heard one of the men cry out. We ran to him and saw him staring at the skeleton of a man by a tree. The skeleton was laid out straight, which was odd. This is our pointer, said Long John. This is one of Flint's jokes. Let's move. The men walked more closely and silently. The skeleton had made all their spirits drop. What do you think Jim meant when he said the skeletons made all their spirits drop? That's right. Skeletons are scary. And sometimes when I get scared, I freeze because I get so scared. So maybe it meant that they were so scared of the skeleton that it made them freeze in terror. It would make me freeze in terror. Okay, now we're starting our last we're starting our last little bit. Chapter 23, The Fright and the Treasure. The men were exhausted and sat down at first chance. They began to talk to about Pirate Flint. He was ugly, and he had a violent temper. You should be glad he's dead then, said Long John. Just then we all heard a voice call out, 50 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, yo-ho-ho. It's Flint! He's back from the dead, cried the mutineers. Does anyone remember who the mutineers are? That's right, there's someone who rebels against authority, so they're the pirates, the other pirates. Fetch me my sword, Darby, the voice called out again. Those were his last words, said one of the men there. That's spooky. The pirates stood rooted in the spot, each one crying out that they were afraid of ghosts. One man read from his Bible. Long John lashed out, that was an echo. Ghosts don't have echoes. That's a living thing. This seemed to bring the men to their senses. Yes, that didn't sound like Flint. It sounded like Ben Gunn. Obviously, no one feared Ben Gunn, even if they thought him dead. The men were back on track and focused on the climb ahead. Long John pulled me by the rope, by which he had tied my hands. His mood had changed. I could see that the treasure was all he was focusing on. There was no mercy left in him. He would find the treasure, and hurt anyone that came in his way. That's not very nice. Just then, we entered a clearing and heard George cry out. We ran to him and saw before us a great hole. We could tell it was not freshly dug. Grass had grown on the caved-in sides. At the bottom were bits of packing crates from Flint's ships, the Rorus. But we all realized one thing. The loot had been found, and 700 pounds of treasure was gone. Does anyone here know what a loot is? Think about what the story said. It said the loot had been found. They were searching for treasure. So the loot means treasure. The loot had been taken. The treasure had been taken. The loot had been found and 700 pounds of treasure was gone. The men jumped into the pit to find one single coin. They climbed out and threw murderous glances toward Long John. George cried out, "This wooden leg fool got us here. Look at him. He knew all along there was no treasure." Long John spoke up, "Back to seeking the post of Captain George." They stood across us, and we looked towards them. What are the odds? One cripple and a boy fighting against 5 of us, said George. Seems like they're outnumbered. Just then, shots rang out and 2 of the men were hit. George fell into the pit. The doctor, Gray, and Ben joined us with their weapons ready. We ran quickly through the woods to cut off those men escaping. We found out that they went the wrong way. Ben, in his year-long wanderings, had found the skeleton and the treasure. He had dug up the gold and moved it to his cave 2 months before we had come to the island. This man's being deceitful. He's hiding the treasure from the rest of them. We made our way to the boats and paddled by the mouth of Ben's cave, where we saw the squire waving to us. We also saw the Hispaniola, which the Hispaniola is our italicized word in the story. Remember, it's the ship. It's their ship, so it's floating offshore. Then they entered the cove and saw Captain Smollett lying beside a fire, and also great heaps of gold and treasure. I thought of many who had died trying to find and claim it. So here, Jim, he's remembering all those that tried to find it. That's very nice of him. Never again to sea, eh, Jim? Asked the doctor. All right, our last 2 pages. At last. It's called At Last, our last chapter. The next few days were spent taking the treasure to the Hispaniola. By every evening, a fortune had been stowed aboard, and there was more fortune waiting to be stowed the next day. We loaded Ben's cave with a good stock of food and supplies. As we were leaving, we passed the surviving mutineers. They begged us to take them along, but we decided not to do so. Now, why do you think that Jim decided not to take those mutineers on board with him? Now, remember, these men were the ones that were really mean and dishonest with Jim, and they were fighting against him when there was no treasure to be found, and now they want to be his friend because there's treasure. I think Jim didn't bring them along because he couldn't trust them. They were dishonest. He couldn't trust them. So he didn't put them on he didn't let them get on the boat with the treasure. Let's go back to our story. I felt extreme joy in leaving Treasure Island. Long John took a small craft and a sack of treasure and made off. We were relieved to see that he was gone. We heard no more of him. I believe he built a new life for himself and was still living with his parrot. When we eventually got home, we all went our separate ways, each with a share of treasure. The end. That was a wonderful story. What did you think, class? Yes, I love this story. It's so fun and it's a thriller. It's so exciting. The genre of this book is actually a fiction adventure novel, And I love adventure novels. They just interest me, and I thought this book would interest you. But it has a very important message to it that we can look to. This text was teaching us that having good morals and keeping your word to others results in good things happening. Jim Hawkins in our story continuously shows good morals and keeps his word even when he had the opportunity to break it. However, he chose to be honest, which resulted in him finding the treasure and getting a share to take home to his family. I'm sure his mother was really happy when he brought that treasure home. The other pirates, mutineers, that were mean and deceitful did not get their treasures, but instead had to face the consequences for being rude and deceitful. This can be connected to your life, students. In the classroom, whenever you choose to do good and to be honest with those around you, you get rewarded for that good behavior and those good choices. However, whenever someone chooses to be mean or dishonest with those around them, there's negative consequences that have to be faced. I want you to tell me, did you think Jim was going to keep his word, or did you think that he was going to betray everyone? You can be honest, whatever you thought was going to happen. Raise your hand if you thought he was going to keep his word. Okay, a good bit. Now raise your hand if you thought that he wasn't going to keep his word. Well, I'm glad to know that Jim did keep his word, aren't you? Because he got treasure, and he saved Long John's life, and he was able to come home and make his mom happy because he brought all that treasure home. That is so exciting. And the same thing happens when we make good choices. We may not find buried treasure, but good things happen to ourselves and those around us. Whenever we're honest, we can make our moms happy, make your teacher happy. Or when you're honest with someone, you may really touch someone's heart that day, and that can make their whole day better. So I want you to think about how important promises are. Think about a time that someone broke a promise to you, or maybe you made a promise and you broke it. I know that's happened to Miss Pearson. I've made promises before and broken them, which was wrong of me, and I had to face the consequences. Has anyone else ever done that before? Me too. So I want you now to go to your desk and to think, do I think keeping my promises to people and being honest is important, or do I think it's okay to break promises? And I want you to write a paragraph about how you feel. But when you write about it, I want you to back up your claim and your opinion by referring to what we read about. Refer to Jim. Think about what Jim did and how it benefited him. And then think about the other pirates who were dishonest. And think about what resulted because of their dishonesty. I want you to refer back to these things as you write your opinion piece. And then we'll come back together. You'll have a few moments and we'll come back together and we'll read these pieces and I'll let you present them to the class. Okay, you can transition to your desk now, and thank you for being so good during this interactive read aloud. Bye, guys.